Welcome everyone to the third session of the Outsport Webinar. Welcome everyone, welcome our guests, welcome our audience, welcome to the people that have been following the Outsport Webinar since the third edition in 2020, in the last period of 2020, when this webinar was invented as a follow-up of the Outsport project. Basically, today will be a very short panel with a strictly precise focus on the topic related to the last World Championship in Qatar. We chose to have a very focused discussion about this disruptive event in the field of LGBTI rights and sport, because the topic has never been on the spotlight in this way before. Basically, this is what happened during Qatar 2022. At the end of the 2022, basically, and we decided to analyze the impact of some declaration, for example, Khalid Salman, the statements of athletes, for example, as Josh Cavallo, who said, I would not feel safe to be over there. What happened in the European football, the reaction of the European football. So basically, what can be after a few months, what has been done, what did we learn about what happened, and how can we make this experience fruitful for our fight towards LGBTI inclusion in sport and in football, towards LGBTI visibility in football, among football players, but among football fans and all the sport community, basically. Remembering that football impacts basically everyone in the world, because we have to remember that Qatar 2022 has been followed by more people than the last Olympic worldwide, through television, web, and other media. So basically, we realized as never before the potential in terms of communication of football, also in the field of human rights, and specifically in the field of LGBTI people human rights. Let me introduce our guest right now for this session. We will have as moderator of our panel discussion Klaus Oslein, which is former president of AGLSF, as you already know him. He's an LGBTI activist in sport and was coordinator of the Outsport project with me in 2020, between 2017 and 2019. Let me welcome him on the floor. Hi, Klaus.
Brody.
How are you?
I'm fine. We are here in sunny Germany, and I'm looking forward to this webinar. And let's continue to introduce the guests that we are expecting.
Great. So let's go on and let's introduce Gaia Ciccarelli, which is former football player, and now is team manager of several football team in the field of female football, and is studying a lot towards the sport management issues. Is doing a lot of things, and she will tell us later. Hi, Gaia. How are you?
Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here with you and talk about football, our favorite thing.
Great, Gaia. Thank you. And we are waiting for the guest. We are gonna have Jake Williamson, who is football player right now in the UK, and has something very important to tell us about coming out of football players. Let me introduce also our incredible Andrea Giuliano, our project assistant since the Outsport project since 5 years right now, I think. The Outsport project could not be possible without Andrea Giuliano. And of course, let me welcome you also finally on behalf of the AICS sector, AICS LGBTI sector. Associazione Italiana Cultura Sport is the grassroots sport body who promoted the Outsport project in 2017, and now arranged the new LGBTI sector, and the Outsport project is continuing within the LGBTI sector, promoting these initiatives, new projects, and basically spaces to talking together from an international perspective about these topics. So I just wanna go through into the topic. I wanna first off read a message. I wanna ask Andrea reading the message of Alexander Becker, co-president of the EGLFA, the International Gay and Lesbian Football Association, who was supposed to be here with us, but he couldn't for suddenly, basically for new reasons connected to his commitments. And he sent us a beautiful statement that we want to read with our Andrea.
Sorry, I cannot join. Yeah.
Andrea, are you ready? Can we show Alexander?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay, good.
We can hear you. We can see you. You're amazing. Good. Please.
So
here we are.
I will go on in reading this message. Okay, so sorry I cannot join the webinar in person with you today for what is an important discussion. Having traveled to Qatar to support England, I know firsthand how difficult the experience for LGBTQ plus identifying fans and supporters. It was the first time in a long while where I didn't feel able to enjoy football while being my whole self. Despite FIFA's assurances, they were clearly not in control of the stadia environment in which I had assumed would be the safest place for me. When Qatar bid for the World Cup, the only rights included in the building criteria were broadcast and intellectual property, where I didn't. Importantly, that has now been expanded to include human rights. However, the fan experience at these events is still not as central as it should be. The evidence from Qatar is clear on that. We should not let this become a battle between minority groups. Fans from the Middle East and of the Islamic faith should be able to enjoy football in the same way as those from the LGBT plus community. Football should be everyone's game. And this was Alexander Baker, co-president at IGLFA.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Andrea, very much. And thanks to Alexander Baker.
Thank you to Alexander for what he wrote.
Which a declaration that helped us to go into the topic. I wanna leave the floor now to my amazing colleague Klaus Oslane. Klaus, the floor is yours to start the discussion, and I can't wait to hear about your.
Yes, thank you, Rosario, and thank you, Andrea, for reading out the message from Alex. I'm in contact with Jake. He had sent me a message saying that he is trying to connect from his mobile. However, he has a very limited battery capacity left over. So as soon as you see him joining us, please alert me that we can interrupt and to give him the floor so that he has the chance to talk about his topic as well. Let's start with Gaia then. you have probably been watching the Mondiale, the World Cup, and you probably know also about the impact of the statements or declarations from Khalid Salman. Do you think that this had a huge impact on the fans and moreover also maybe on one or the other player in the tournament?
For sure. I mean, I still remember before when Qatar got, to actually be the host, there was a big, I would say, worry, not only for what was seen as not so clear human rights, stance in terms of the rights of the workers and of their families. And it was very hard for me at the beginning. I actually didn't watch it. I was able to not watch the group stages, and then, passion just took over, and I did tune in towards the last stages, but I really could not imagine what it would be like. I mean, if I were there and, identifying not only as a non-binary person, but having a preference, having a partner who is a woman, to be worried about my safety. And I actually wrote down a couple of things. It is true that fan experience is not the most central thing, or it hasn't been in the last, I would say, 10, 20 years. And it's a bit worrisome because, in fact, these events attract 60,000, 80,000 people. And so I think that should be the focus. That should be where we would move towards. And I think it's key in male football that this becomes a new normal, that human rights are central and that everyone can be their whole self. Just like was said, I mean, you can't just for a month forget all of the fights and the battles, the internal and external battles that you've been through. I mean, it's reliving your trauma, and it's just not right.
I totally agree with that. And I mean, we had seen that some of the European football associations have reacted also on the statements and also on the situation in Qatar. Do you think it was enough? Would you have had the wish that the European FAs or even the UEFA would have reacted in a different way or in some stronger way?
For sure. I mean, we saw that it was getting a bit of traction at the beginning. I was hoping that statements by, for example, the Norway national team or Germany even would actually have, as I said, some traction. But then again, economic interests, and we know what Qatar was about and how important was, I would say also, I mean, a positive thing, a positive outlook that I really am glad is, I definitely think this will have an impact in terms of Islamophobia and in how, Muslims around the world and what is the culture in Qatar and the Emirates and the Arab Peninsula perceived, what it's really like, what some things, they're there, some other things they're more about stereotypes. So I definitely think that this will be a positive thing to come. But I wanted more from the Italian FA. I mean, we didn't qualify, but I wanted more I was expecting more from the other European nations, especially since we didn't have, I mean, I would understand from a South American football association or the interests of Argentina, Brazil in winning again. I was expecting a lot more from the European FAs, for sure.
You just used the word that I will pick up to formulate my next question, because you are talking about stereotypes. And as you know, I have been living for several years in Italy, and I was playing in an amateur football team in Italy, actually in two of them. One of them was the football team of teachers of a language school in Italy. And I never did my coming out there because there was no reason to do so. I mean, nobody could ask, nobody wanted to know. And I'm usually open with my homosexuality, but I'm also not actively approaching people and telling them, look, guys, I'm gay. I hope you don't mind. So what happened was I was playing for that team, and there were only, as far as I know, straight players there. And the team manager one day lost his phone, and so he lost also my number. And then he tried to get my number again, and he Googled me, and then he found out that I was in the board of the European Gay Lesbian Sport Association. He contacted me, invited me for the next game, and then he took me aside and said, well, is it really true that you are gay? I would never have expected that, because usually I think gays don't play football. So I think this is one of a stereotype. And on the other side, I always hear or I observe that people have the assumption that female players possibly are lesbians. So I think these are some very strong stereotypes. Do you have similar experiences with that? And what do you think would be the best way to address that?
Yeah, that's very common. I remember, I would say 12 or 13 years ago. So I grew up abroad. And then at some point when I was 18, we came back with my family to Italy. And having played in the United States, again, we never talked about our sexual orientation or gender identity. We just didn't care. We were just playing and players. But when I came back to Italy, talking to some of my friends, one of the first questions was, oh my God, is it true that they're all lesbians? And it wasn't you're all lesbians, it's they're all lesbians, because for some weird reason, I couldn't be one, or for them, I wasn't fitting the stereotype. So I definitely agree. And I mean, I'm hoping that, and I'm seeing it with the new generations and the new things we talk about, how sexual orientation and gender identity is moving away from the person that you are, what you represent, and how you are, as you said, upfront about it, because now it's a given that we can all be many other things than the systemic cisgender heterosexual person. And I feel there's a big imbalance of power between male and female football, in the sense that for male football, I still see it as very important to uphold this like toxic masculinity, big guys, strong, getting all these women after because we won. Whereas everyone can play football. It doesn't really matter who you go out with. And, Rosario, we've talked about this so much, also with the teams, Irupi, and what's going on in Rome, and how everyone is sort of saying, it doesn't really matter who I choose to live my life with in a romantic way, in a sexual way. I'm just having fun. And I really like that this is not important in female soccer, in female football. It's never been, and I've felt really comfortable with any sexual orientation in my locker room. No one's ever made an issue about it. So that's really something that I would hope catches on in male football.
In your opinion, do you think that the football associations, or even only if you go to a lower level, the football clubs, do enough to encourage people to live themselves in the way that they want? Or is it maybe also a lack of engagement from these organizations to help to foster or to raise the awareness about it and the acceptance about possible different ways of living your private life?
They don't do enough. I mean, I'm talking about Italy specifically. I would say they're even an obstacle in both worlds. I remember 5 years ago when I was still playing, we had someone from the actual FIGC, so the Football Association in Italy, come into the locker room, and we were talking about getting more rights. So I'm not sure, I mean, yes, you do know. From this year, female soccer players are finally professional in Italy, in Serie A and Serie B. and it's amazing finally. But 5 years ago, we would still get talked about, oh, if you're wearing your team uniform, you shouldn't engage in like hugging and embracing and kissing. It's kind of like if they see you smoking and drinking a beer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really happy that a lot of people, spoke up against this. I was very vocal about it because it's my business. And I definitely don't think that my team is going to get problems because I'm embracing my girlfriend at the end of a game and I'm wearing the team jersey or whatever. So I feel like in female soccer, there was a big movement and a lot of activism from within. And I guess from the outside, they thought it was enough to just talk us out of it. So there was a big movement within and less obstacles from the outside. Whereas in the male, environment, I feel like it's completely the opposite. Whereas it's very scary to move from within and do something because there's a lot of obstacles.
Anticipating my next question, because I observed that it seemed to be easier for women to do the coming out, because we have several examples from really high level players, like the players from Norway. Even here in Germany we have a lot, and it seemed to be less traumatic for them than for male gay players. I think the only really top level player that ever came out, and he came out after his career, was Thomas Hitzelsberger from Germany, who played also for Rome, I know. And then we have some players in lower leagues, like second, third, fourth category, but not so many players like we know from female national teams. I mean, we have national players from Denmark, from Norway, from Germany who did their coming out, and it seemed to be more or less unproblematic for them. Do I underestimate the problems that these players had to face, or is it really easier for them to come out?
I mean, I feel like there's different elements that come into this. The first one I'm thinking about is if people don't care about you, it's easier to just come out. And so this is what I felt playing in Italy, is just that no one really cared about what we were doing. And it's a lot easier when the people don't give you attention to just be like, okay, so if you really are not paying attention to what I'm going to be doing, then I'm just going to go all in. I'm not going to ask for something and then maybe ask for something more. It's like, you know what? We're all lesbians and we don't care. Which is not true, of course, but it was just really, I feel like when Italy participated in the World Cup and we got fourth, and this was 2019, if I remember correctly. And it was just like so in your face. From football players just running up to their wives, their partners, and just embracing on camera. And I think that also shows you the amount of support that there is. If your support system is strong, then it's going to be a lot easier for you. If you know that the coach has your back, regardless if they're male, female, or whatever gender they identify with. If you know that your teammates, straight, bisexual, whatever, they know you. They know that that's not something that is important because you've never made advances or scary stuff happening in the locker room, all of these stereotypes. They know that you're their teammate. And so that's all that really matters. I really don't know how much support there is now in a, let's say, first division, Serie A locker room, if someone comes out. And we've heard this a couple of years ago from players saying, yeah, I mean, it's hard. Maybe you should wait until you retire, because I feel like there's so much power that you can lose. There's so much on the line. And again, with female football, it's such a different perspective because, again, in the patriarchy, if you're the one that's less important, there's so much you can grab without people noticing. And I feel very sorry for, bisexual, gay, even trans players who are playing male soccer, male football, and they're just scared. And I wish we could do more.
I totally agree with that as well. I'm now playing in a straight team here in our local football team here in Germany, in Koblenz. And from the beginning on, most of the players, most of my teammates knew that I'm gay, because we are here living in a small city. Everyone knows everyone, and so people know my husband. Nobody really cared. I mean, it has never been any topic to discuss. I have never experienced any negative comment, or not even like things that people consider to be a joke, which can be still quite offensive. So I think on the lower level, within teams, or maybe even in smaller football clubs, the message has already arrived that we are just football players like anybody else. But I think we need more support from the big organizations like the football federations, the national federations, or maybe even regional federations. Is that the same situation in your country, in Italy, or do you think there is a difference?
I mean, I think in such a country where religion is still a big part of our culture, it certainly feels like people are kind of stepping on eggshells when they try to change something or say, hey, it would be nice if we could be more chill about what's happening. It's a big missed opportunity, because you could just send a message with, again, like, for example, the One Love armband, or what we're doing against racism and how tough it is for that to, be like, hello, 2023, it's not that hard. We should be doing so much more. I really don't understand what they're afraid of. That's what still baffles me, is that, as you were saying, it's not something that really matters unless we're talking about mental health and, well-being of players. And until we still see it as an activity where you have to perform, and the only thing that matters is that we win and you score, and we get the trophy or whatever, we're not really taking into consideration the whole aspect of what being an athlete is. That's why I'm still very, very, I mean, federations should do better. And with the traction that female soccer is getting now in Italy, I really expect them, with the people who've now also gone into the federations and who are now representing, higher roles, I'm expecting a big change, for sure.
Thank you, Gaia. I think Jake didn't make it to really connect to us because we haven't seen him. Rosario, can you confirm that he still is not in the waiting room of the webinar?
Unfortunately, no. I don't see him in the backstage. Didn't you receive any comments by any replies by him? Nothing.
Do we have questions from outside, from our YouTube or Instagram channels?
There are people just welcoming us, saying hello, say hi, but actually there are no questions. I would go on. I wanted to show a video because you mentioned the topic of the necessity of doing more. Basically, Gaia said we expect more from our football federation, the Serie A league, basically all bodies and institutions managing sport and managing football. Because as you mentioned, Italy has been really absent in in this debate. The fact that the national team was not present in the World Cup is not a justification, can't be a justification. There has been also a petition of the Italian LGBTI Association joined a joint petition, asking basically Italian football just rise, please say something about that. Please say something against what's happening, against the declaration of Khalid Salman, against the fact that the team can't even wear the rainbow armband and so on. I have to say, because I am in the, as I said, I am project manager in the AICS LGBTI sector and Outsport coordinator, but I'm also the president of the Gay Net Association, one of the Italian association, promoting this petition. I have to say that something is moving, fortunately. Something is moving. I will tell you something about that later. But staying on the topic of what can be done, basically, and what has been done in other countries, I wanted to show this video, and then I wanted to remember to everybody the context, because we saw this video in November, and maybe people following us at home will remember when as they will see. Just a moment. Let's see if you can hear, I hope. Just just tell me if you can't hear, okay? Okay.
I'm a man, and I love men. I do, please don't be shocked, have sex with other men. This is normal. So please get used to it or stay out of football. Because the most important rule in football is for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're lesbian, if you're gay, it's for everyone. For the boys, for the girls, and for everyone in between. So abolish the death penalty. Abolish all the penalties regarding sexual and gender identity. The rule that football is for everyone is so important. We cannot allow you to break it, no matter how rich you are. You are more than welcome to join the international football community, and also, of course, to host a big tournament. But in sports, it is how it is. You have to accept the rules.
And we could, of course, hear people clapping in the background of this audio recording. May I say something connecting?
Just something about the context, and I give you the floor.
Yeah.
This guy is called. His name is Dario Minden, and he is the spokesman of the German Football Fan Association Unsere Kurve, a national association encompassing almost all the German football fan clubs. This association representing fan clubs from all the country basically. Fan clubs basically committed in the topic of the governance of the football clubs. Because there is a big issue about the governments, about the participation of the football fans in the governance of the football of the top level football clubs. Basically, they are committed with this, but they are very clear the topic of inclusion and participation also in terms of human rights, and they sent as this person representing the entire association in front of the Qatar ambassador in the framework of a conference this conference organized by the German Football Federation, so the equivalent, or the Italian FIGC, or the Football Association, the Spanish Football Association, or whatever. So basically, 2 months before Qatar 2022, there was this conference. It was October, before the declaration of Khalid Salman, basically. So there was this was not a reaction. This is an example of basically of good policy, because from the sport institution, because the German Football Federation organized this conference about human rights in football. They invited the Qatar ambassador in Germany, and the Qatar ambassador had this beautiful, this disruptive surprise, I would say. And according to me, this is an amazing example. Please, Andrea.
Yes, it surely is a good example of, speaking up for yourself and for the community you represent. However, as we were talking about earlier, as for the One Love armband, that's for sure a very good idea and a very good method to show support. The problem is that all of this happened in a context where the hypocrisy is undeniable, as also Gaia was saying, as Klaus was saying, as you were saying before. So the problem is that it's I always have the feeling that it's just never enough in terms of what we achieve, comparing to, if we compare it to the power structures we are against. So it is true, while it is true that something is moving in a good direction, it's also true that it's been going on for so long, and actually demonstrating that the World Cup can be held in a country where basically slavery still exists, and where people are basically forbidden to from the sports sector and from the fans sector, forbidden to express themselves. It's still, of course, is a lot of food for thought, but it also makes us think that the problem is mainly within the system rather than around the system. So that's unfortunately, I cannot be very positive about what happened. And although I do support campaigns, of course I do support these campaigns, the One Love armband, I don't think, unfortunately, it's effective enough. And in the context of such a mega event held in one of the least democratic countries in the world, I don't think it was a big success. If anything, though, it did spark a lot of debate, and that's what we're talking about right now as well. So, of course, you cannot only extract completely positive or completely negative things from things like this. What worries me and what scares me is the fact that many other federations internationally, and I'm not only talking about soccer, are still too timid in giving answers or in taking stances.
No, it's very clear. I totally agree, Andrea. We are speaking about positive things in the middle of a lot of negative aspects. This is basically true, and basically, I wanted to stress the importance of this video because it's a good example for our football in Italy and for football in those countries, also still in Europe.
Definitely.
We
definitely need more examples like that, and we definitely need more people stepping up, especially during the conference, especially during the in front of the powerful, and telling that we need so many more.
because we don't have to forget the Eastern Europe situation. I mean, because if we think about France, Spain, we are in a situation, the UK, even if, beyond the European Union, and regardless the precise border of the European Union, basically. But speaking in general, the European Union founders are on the path of what we saw right now in terms of involvement of sport institution. But we also had countries like Bulgaria in the European Union, for example. I mentioned Bulgaria because as Associazione Italiana Cultura Sport, we are going to involve them in a new project, a new follow-up project of the Outsport in the upcoming months. And there is a very complicated situation because with the new election, we have we are going to have an even more right-wing government, basically. The case of Hungary, for example. We remember the controversy about the rainbow illumination of the stadium in München. In München is the German name. How can I say München in English? I'm sorry. Munich,
Yes.
sorry. During Euro 2020. Poland and also the Czech Republic. So this is a very important challenge, not just for the sake of football, but for the sake of equality in general. I'm saying.
Exactly.
I have a question for Klaus. I mean, because it looks like Germany is kind of a very advanced country in this field, and kind of it could look like an obvious question, but how did you arrive as a country to involve supporters, basically football supporters, in a so wide way in these topics? What happened in Germany in the last 20 years that didn't happen in Italy, basically, or in other European countries? I know we could do an entire conference about that, but maybe there are some considerations that could be done on that.
Well, thanks for the question. I think we need to go back not only 20 years, but maybe even 40 years. I'm old enough to talk about these times because when I was having my first experience or my coming out, that was like 45 years ago. And in that time, Germany was probably more or less in the same situation as Italy is still right today. It took a lot of very small steps, and the secret is make the people understand that you're normal. And we did this in the beginning when we talk about gay pride, not with what we know today as gay pride in Munich, in Berlin, or in Cologne, where there's a big party with thousands of people doing really a big party, dancing naked or half naked on trucks with truck cranes that are marching along with us. But it was a very quiet and a very small group of activists that were marching with some flyers in their hands, maybe with some flags. It was not even rainbow flags in these times. And we try to make the people understand we are just ordinary people. We are not that much different. The only difference that we have is what happens in our bedroom. And to make the people understand that you are just a normal person is the secret to make you being also accepted. Because I think many of the stereotypes, many of the fears that lead to stereotypes or to even discrimination is really coming from the fear of the people from the unknown. If they know you and that if they understand that you're not that much different from them, half of the way is done. It took us a lot of time, and I mean, we have also the same-sex marriage since 2014. That is not that long time. Until a few years before that, being homosexual was even forbidden by law, even though it has never been applied since the Second World War, but it still existed some law against homosexuality, and it took a lot of time also to remove that. But it was always small steps that we do, and I see in other countries, and Italy is a perfect example for that. And I had a lot of discussions with people in the gay community while I was living in Italy, because I did some statement. I said, well, actually, the concept of the gay pride in Italy, in my opinion, is wrong, because you're doing the big party. And what are you really trying to achieve? What are you really trying to demonstrate there? Put yourself in the shoes of some like 70, 80-year-old grandmother, grandfather living in some village in South Italy, and he sees in the TV, and that is unfortunately the only thing that passes the TV, men in high heels and half-naked go-go dancers on a truck. And then ask yourself, would you, if you would be a 70, 80-year-old person, accept that your grandson, granddaughter is behaving like that? Would you consider this to be normal? I think what we need to do is show the people what is our normal life, because our normal life is not going in high heels to our offices. That's maybe what we do in the carnival time. That's maybe what we're doing in the gay pride time, but that's an exception for most of us. And I think this is what is the wrong concept, because that is what is passing in the mass media. So we need to do either a step back and don't really celebrate the gay pride in the same way that it is a big party, because we don't have the reason to party, at least not in Italy or in Bulgaria or in Hungary, where the situation is even worse. Because if you go back and do a literal translation from the word gay pride to your mother language, it means to be proud of what you are. If you're proud of what you are, you don't need to hide. You don't need to really fear discrimination or even harassment or even attacks or whatever. But this is not the case in Italy, because most of the Italians are trying to hide their homosexuality. And this is very sad, and it has, for me, the same situation like it has been like 30 or 40 years ago in Germany. And it takes a lot of steps and small political steps, which are not the parties, to come to the point where we are in the Netherlands, in Belgium, in Luxembourg, in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, or wherever. And that's maybe the message also for the people out there. Focus a little bit less on party, focus a little bit more on political work, and you might make bigger progress.
Yeah, it's a very interesting advice. I personally think that the problem is not the energy we put in organizing Pride March, but the energy we don't put in other actions. This is my personal idea, because I mean, Pride March are part of the history of the wide LGBT.
I totally agree with you, Rosario. The gay pride is important, and we need to show who we are, but we need to show what we are really. We should not only show that we are a million of drag queens in Italy, because we are not. Most of us are simply ordinary people. But what is passing in the mass media are only the images that make audience, like you say in Italy. We need to pass more political messages in the gay prides, less the party aspect.
Basically, we have a very wide participation. I have to say, in the last Pride in Italy, we consider that they are the most participated manifestation in the country. The second are the manifestation for the environment, Fridays for Future, the movement. So I agree with you that we should of course increase the political impact of those manifestations, because there are 3 million last year. We were 2.5 million, 3 million people in 50 different cities in the country. Also small Pride with 1,000 people, the Pride in Rome with 900,000. I mean, but I agree with you that it's not clear in the media which are the political statements, what we politically want. It's not immediately clear. It's not immediately clear. It's interesting that we have a lot of straight people joining the Pride March, and it's something that made me hopeful in some kind. But that we need to increase the political impact. I totally agree with you, Klaus. Gaia.
Yes, I wanted to throw some provocative questions in the mix. Thank you, Klaus, for all these really interesting points. The big question I have is it not clear to people that LGBTQI folks are normal, or are we fighting against a narrative that is bigger than us and that keeps on being replayed on repeat, even though we keep throwing so many different things at it? Because what is happening now in Italy is, I think, the emblem of what we are trying to discuss here. And they are trying to take away the legitimacy of having parents of the same sex when this was already granted, when this is I think the most normal thing, or I would say organic, because I don't like normal, where two people come together, or one person, or more than two people, to grow someone, to help and nurture someone. And when you see them, what we call famiglie arcobaleno, so rainbow families in the street, I would say they're even boring if we want to, say something provocative. Just people with their strollers, with their snacks, just being like, hey, we would still like to be parents. So if something that is, again, I'm trying to be, light, so boring is taken away, I think the biggest issue behind not accepting someone who might be half naked is that people are taught not to be indifferent, not to be embracing, but to actually hate that. Because I think this is something that is key in countries where, again, there is a big religious backbone, where that religious backbone operates on fear, on shame, and those elements are key. They follow you for life. If you are shamed into not accepting who you are, and if you are, you become fearful of anything that is different from the status quo, it is really hard to move away from that. I see this as something that is very present in Italy across all generations, except the newest one. Generations that are born outside of a religious indoctrination, where there is more room to explore, more room for questions, and less room for judgments. Because in our households, my partner, I've met her grandmother. There's nothing that's been said explicitly, but she knows. I mean, I go over there all the time. We sit together, we eat. I don't think she thinks that we are both sick people, that we are damaged, just like some declarations that we hear. But that is because this person knows that we can be plural, that we can be many variations. And it doesn't touch anything inside of her to make her afraid. I'm very happy that you brought up, pride and how these messages get taken, and how people are not able to understand that it's maybe one of the only days where we feel safe in the street, where we feel like we can express the full extent of the fabulousness that any life can be, not just LGBT life, where we are many, where we finally feel like we are not a minority, and how powerful that can be, to have a sense of agency. So I really, embrace your advice, and I hope that, as Rosario was saying, things are moving. I really hope that we can get through these darker times and get through the cracks, because it's time. I mean, I'm so tired of, having not to hide, but being afraid. It's not a life worth living. I always say, if 5 days out of 7 I'm doing activism and I'm worried, and I'm just living 2 days out of 7, what kind of a life is that? You know what I mean? It's tiresome.
Kaya, I think you're more or less even confirming what I say, because when you talk about your private life in your family, with your grandparents, with your parents, I think they have learned that you are still the normal person that they expect you to be. And they have recognized there is nothing really different or scaring in being not heterosexual, cis woman or man. And this is what needs to arrive as a message to all the people, not only in our private environment, like our family, our friendship circle, but also in the general public. And I think that the mass media, but also the politics, need to take more action to reach this goal and to support us in this. It's not so much that we need other different laws, at least not here in Germany. In Italy, the situation I know is quite different, and in Eastern Europe, it's like we said before, even worse. But it's also like the public opinion that has to be changed, and it does not change only because it is legal. It has to be also accepted, and we need to really promote our normal life, that we are not different from anybody else, except of what our maybe sexual or also emotional preferences are. But this does not affect anybody outside of our really narrow private sphere. I mean, I will not hug any foreign man on the street just because I think, oh, this guy is cute. Like you would not do the same if it would be an attractive woman and you would be heterosexual. That's just normal behavior. You see, you admire maybe the person, but you don't take any action that might offend this person. And that is the same that we don't do with people from the same sex in our cases.
For sure. I mean, I definitely think that this, what you are talking about, like a kind of new normal, I would say, is very possible. And what I think we all envision, because it's also a way of all being better together. It's not just an agenda for some people, which is also something I hear all the time. There is no gay agenda. There's no gay lobby. There's just, having, for those of us who are still here and for those of us who can live their life like they want to, it's a way to be like, hey, I'm having a great time. So if you want something more out of your life, just know that it is possible and that we can all have a better time together.
Exactly.
I have a comment of skipping back to sport, and taking also inspiration about this interesting conversation. The idea of normality, basically, which is challenging and ambiguous for some aspects, but there is something that there are some comments about the topic of coming out in football based on the assumption that it's not necessary to come out as a gay player. There are many people in Italy after Jakub Jakto coming out, of course, saying, but why did he say that? Why? The important thing is that he play good. He's a good guy. He's a professional. Why should he say about his feelings? Why should he say about what he does behind the sheets in his bedroom, basically? And this is something that should be addressed, because people, for people who don't experience the situation of LGBTI people, it's not easy to understand this point. And this is why I come to the topic of normality, because the only thing in which we are different is not as human beings. You're right, both. But we are different for the idea we tried in the last decades in all the world we tried to spread in the last decade, the ideas of equality, the ideas of a society without sexual repression, without sexual taboos, without patriarchal values. This is the difference. So, and I think it's an important difference that we also put into practice also with our social life, in our clubs and whatever. But there is also another thing that happens in a locker room and that can happen in societies as well. The idea of telling about ourselves. So when people ask why is it necessary the coming out of an athlete, do you want to know my answer? What do you do when you are at the supermarket, you are in delay, and your wife is waiting for you at home because she needs the flour for preparing whatever, or she needs the bacon, whatever. You say, please. You say to the man for the cashman, you say, please go fast because my wife is waiting for me. If you have an husband and you're a male, you are not comfortable in the same way to say that. And this is what happened in Italy, because according to the Fundamental Rights Agency of the European Union, 62% of LGBT people in Italy are still in the closet. Okay, so image in football, we also have the data in football from the Outsport research. We have the one athlete out of 3 who is in the closet and whatever. So in the locker room, what happens in the locker room? Basically in the male locker room, hi, my name, the new guy at the beginning of the season in a football team. You know, Klaus, in a football team, the members change every year. Okay, you have new people coming in September at the beginning of the season, no? So nice to meet you. My name is Rosario. What do you do in your life? What about girls? The third question in 5 minutes, average. And basically, everyone feels free to tell about himself. But if you're gay, you're not. If you're bisexual, even worse, because you're ambiguous, basically. So, what these people say about the private life is a big misunderstanding, because what we are social being, as the ancient philosopher Aristotle said. We are social being. We tend to tell about ourselves, to share our life. We tend to do that, and everyone should be comfortable the same way to do that. So this is according to me, this is the new normality we are trying to address in football. And this also, I don't know what happened exactly on the other side in a female football locker room, in terms of speaking about sexual life and sexual and relationship. But I also think that there is and this guy, you can tell, I think that there is the habit to talk about personal affection and relationships. Can you confirm that?
I mean, there is, but I wouldn't say that it's one of the first questions that comes along, unless there might be a romantic interest. So unless someone is interested in getting to know that person more, then there are questions, maybe not directly to the person, but that you might ask to the friend who brought the person there. You know, oh, is this person bisexual? Is this person, you know, gay, or is she straight? What's happening? I feel like what you brought up is, so I feel like this is really interesting, because I feel like for men, so first it's a given that you're straight, of course. I mean, it's a given that everyone is straight. And then I feel like women are a big expected part of a man's life, which brings us to the third question you were talking about. Whereas for my experience in female football, it's not really something that comes up automatically. It's more like, what do you do? You know, like, what do you do with your life? Where do you go to school? Where do you go to university? What's your job? And then, why are you here? In the sense of like, what can you bring to the team? And then your sexual preference is more open. I don't know if that's maybe because we always say that for women, it's less frowned upon than for men, because for men, it can be seen as something that is negative, taking away from.
Yes. Not talking about women is a problem for men.
Exactly. But that, again, the issue, I think, is not the talking, whereas, you know, the lack of cannot be neutral. So it can't be seen as something neutral. It is something negative, because to be a man in the patriarchal system, you have to consume women. And so if you don't, then there's something weird. So that's why, coming back to even what Klaus was saying, I feel like coming out is very important if you want to do it, of course.
Yeah.
It's not necessary, but I feel like when you do it, you're doing it because you're stating that something exists. And if you don't do that, this is what I think is missing from modern football, is not taking a stance, at least in Italy. If you don't do it, because I feel like players feel like if they don't do anything, they just do their job, then they're not taking a stance, they're being neutral. But that's not true, because if you don't say anything and you just follow the flow, you are basically saying that that flow is okay. So if I'm at a soccer game and someone yells, you know, you faggot, and I don't take a stance against that, then I'm basically saying that it's just an insult, when it's not just an insult. Just like when we get racist chants and then players say, oh, but you shouldn't go under the fans and, you know, be happy that you scored. I mean, I was right there. What am I supposed to do? Run 50 meters and go somewhere else? I can't even celebrate where I am. So I feel like there's a lot of, again, hypocrisy in feeling like our actions don't speak louder than our words, and not knowing that everything we do is political, especially if you're at such a high level. That's just what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, if we're playing with our friends, whatever, that's fine. But if you're part of such a big system, at some point, you need to be reminded that, you know, what you're doing is being watched, it's being consumed, and it's an example of how you lead your life.
An example. You said the magic word.
That's the key word, example. Yeah.
Because as a football player, especially at the top level, you are a model for the youngest, for the younger generations. And basically, you are a model in terms of communication, in terms of media, and that you inspire. Even if you don't want to do that, you inspire.
And this is real life. I mean, I had two friends of mine, they're twins, they both couldn't go play soccer when they were 13 because their parents were afraid that they would become lesbians. This is true. This is real life. In Rome, I'm not talking about Islamabad. I'm talking about Rome. So in Rome, in 1995, you're not sending your daughter to play 5 against 5 in the afternoon because you're afraid she'll become a lesbian. So again, what Klaus was saying, I mean, so what? So what if the coach has a partner? So what if one of the girls has a girlfriend?
Another interesting thing about lesbophobia, because we spoke I'm happy because we are going to the details of this today. Another difference that lesbophobia impacts incredibly heterosexual women in this sense. Because if an heterosexual woman play football, oh my God, she's lesbian, she could become. It's a very common path. Now less, but before, basically.
It's becoming less and less. This is becoming less and less, but it's still very present. Sorry if I may interrupt just a second, but that's, you know, that's also very much interwoven with the patriarchal power structures that, for example, in terms of soccer, decide that women, let's talk about Italy, for example, women in Serie A are the only female category in soccer that is paid, and their pay equals that of men in Serie C. So that's already, you know, like, once you see things like this, I think, you know, words become kind of useless if you get what I mean, meaning that, you know, what do you possibly want to comment on this rather than throw your anger at these power structures? So we should really be talking about that as well, in the way not only lesbophobia but also misogyny can lead to the cancellation of entire strata of society, both in sports as in life.
I want to go. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Gaia. Thank you, everyone, for the fruitful conversation. Really, I want to go finally towards the conclusion, but with the starting idea of this panel. Basically, what did we learn? Because that is the question. Now the FIFA developed a new criteria, we know, for the upcoming World Championship. The first will be in 2026. And before this webinar, we analyzed the documentation produced by the 16 cities that will host the competition in 2026. They produced a lot of documentation related to the analysis they did to in the field of human rights, and they elaborated a plan to guarantee human rights. My personal thought is that we have to see this in the facts. We have to wait to express a judgment about the effectiveness of the new FIFA regulation and the new FIFA due diligence to guarantee competition, ensuring the respect of human rights. We have to wait, basically, to see what happened concretely in 2026, because it's not just a matter of what happened in the stadium. It's just a matter of what happened to the fans, the football player, but also the way that in which communication is managed, the way in which inclusion is practiced from several points of view. But I mean, what did we learn in order to raise awareness to within, for example, the Italian football, or within sport institutions in countries which are basically not advanced like the Western Europe, basically. And from my point of view, what I can say, we learned in Italy, the lesson learned by the LGBT Association is that sport is not just something related to association dealing with gay-friendly sport or inclusive sport. It's not just a matter of guaranteeing safe space for LGBTI people playing sport, but it's a political field. We basically experimented that sport is a political field in sense of topics, not in sense of parties, obviously, but it's a field in which we have to stay and we have to basically take position. We have to argue, we have to protest, we have to promote petitions, we have to address directly sport institution asking for official meetings and whatever. And we did it. I have to say we did it because after the petition for Qatar 2022 between November and January, what I can say right now is that there has been the first ever meeting between the delegation of the LGBTI movement and the official league, Lega Serie A, the Serie A league, which encompasses all the top football team in Italy, and basically is the body managing the TV rights. Andrea helped me. Basically, the rights related to transmission.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch the word you were saying.
Is the body which manages the copyright of the television copyright, the rights to transmit the football.
The royalties.
The royalties. Okay, the royalties basically. Whatever regards football in streaming platform and wherever we can see football. So this is Lega Serie A, managing the events, the top events of football. We had the first meeting between them, speaking about what can be done in terms of raising awareness and training. And something should happen in May. This is what I can say right now. And also, even maybe it's not more important or less important, but it's different. Also, the amateur league moved, and we had also a meeting with them. And the amateur league, it doesn't reach the same number in terms of spectators than Lega Serie A. We're speaking about Lega Serie A. We have basically millions and millions of people, maybe 10 million every weekend watching the Serie A in the streaming platform. But the amateur league organized 12,000 matches every weekend all over the countries, from the national amateur league to the local categories, with matches counting about 1,000 per spectators, 500 spectators, the very local league. But you arrive with the amateur league, you arrive in the very countryside, in the very small villages, in the very little quarter where the topic of equality is still is even a bigger challenge. So they asked for a consultation with the LGBT Association, and they are intentional to do something for May for the IDA audit. We'll see. Something is moving, even in Italy. This is the breaking news. So we learned something, and we are trying to do something in this direction. I don't know, and of course we are as Associazione Italiana Cultura Sport, AICS, we are moving forward, but in two main directions: education and research, especially in the field of gender identity and transgender issue, something we are not talking today because it's an incredible open issue that could not be addressed in a few minutes, but we are going on. But considering the topic of today, something is moving in the field of homophobia, in respect of homophobia, by the main football sport institution. I want to ask you a quick consideration about that, and then we go towards the conclusion. Who wants to start?
About what, like the last part or the whole thing?
What is happening now? I mean, the last thing I would say.
I mean, I'm very happy about everything that's happening now. I definitely hope it's not just for show. I think that not just Qatar, but if we think of where it was 4 years before, Russia, that's a pretty disappointing trend. So I definitely hope that with what is coming up next, we can learn from past mistakes. And as we said before, that it is such a big stage. And so it would be such a wasted opportunity to leave all the room for just, again, consumerism and products that have rainbows on it and stuff like that, but to actually, you know, as Klaus was saying, again, show that we are people, that we might have just a couple of things that are different, but we might do the same thing every day. We just sleep next to a different person, or not even that. We might just have a different preference. And I am very happy that this is happening now. I think we have a lot of traction, as I said, and I could definitely see maybe, you know, the Male Football Association learning a couple of things from the Female Football Association, to be unapologetic and just not give a crap. You know, I mean, it's kind of time that we set a different rhythm, and we owe it to the present, but also to, you know, whoever is getting into sports right now and is a little person, is a young person, to be able to have fun and not have to think, be afraid, or, oh my God, what's going to happen? Just focus on that moment, which is so precious. I mean, we all know sports and we love sports. And I think that's the biggest, you know, takeaway I also get from the talk that we have today, is that deep down, those of us who not only play the sport, but watch it and love it, that's what we want, is just to be able to focus on that, and to know that in that moment, in that trance that we have, that, like, you know, sports super adrenaline moment, we're not just doing something for fun, but that we're nurturing and helping the world we envision.
Clear. Very clear, Gaia, very clear. I hope we can see together and push together this the upcoming actions in the field of football. And I want to ask Klaus also some final considerations.
I think we have achieved a lot in the past. It's different from country to country, of course, but even in Italy, if you look back like 20 years, 30 years, you will notice that the Italy of today is more liberal than it has been in those days. But on the other side, we have also a very long way to go, and in some countries, even a longer way. Like Gaia mentioned, Russia is going backwards, while other countries are making progress. So I think it needs more of like a European-wide approach, which can maybe also be supported by projects like the Outsport project, which was a pan-European project, or is a pan-European project, supported by the EU Commission with the financial help. But we need more of these initiatives. And on the other side, it's not only the politicians that need to act, it's also the society and the sport federations and associations Europe-wide. And if we want to see it on a global scale, I would say worldwide, because there are regions in our world where people can only dream of having the liberty of what we have in Italy, for example.
Great. Andrea, do you want to add some considerations about that?
Well, I don't want to be repeating many things that have already been said, but probably one thing that I would like to underline is also about well, Gaia was mentioning it earlier, also Klaus. It's another thing that I would like to point out in general terms, in general communication terms, in the general way that people catch the message. I think we shouldn't be talking about love that much. I think we should be talking about life and dignity and the value of a person, and that has nothing to do with love. And as Gaia also mentioned earlier, it's not about who you love, because what if you're asexual or aromantic? It's not about that. You are a person and you're valid as such. And I think that there's, despite, as Klaus has said, despite a lot of progress made, I'm sorry if I'm being the pessimistic one today, but I really think that there's not, many basics are still missing in the picture. And yeah, of course, keep up the good fight, but keep it up also in different terms, at different levels, at different layers, and focus less, what I would say, focus less on the love factor that, as you can see, is being hyper commercialized. And that's, I don't think that happened by chance. I think we should be really talking a lot more about dignity and life, not love as an absolute value, but life, the one that you have, the one life that you do have. So, sorry, I'm just gonna stop it here.
No, it's human rights, human rights, whatever human you are.
Yeah, human rights, basically. So
human rights.
What you're saying is really true. I mean,
yeah,
we should be able to combine a lot of pieces of a wide puzzle, but
yeah,
the of dignity is at the forefront.
And beyond that, because I understand that love is love, but if there's no life, then what's love got to do with that?
Basically, I can say that we did a lot, even if we are not so many as in the first two editions of the Outsport Webinar. But I can tell you that we will have a lot of things to do in the upcoming months, because as AICS, Associazione Italiana Cultura Sport, we are running two new projects which are follow-up of the Outsport project, as I said before. And next year we will have a lot of new results to present, to comment, to share with international guests. So, Andrea, we can just start to prepare the next edition, because it will be a very, very wide one. I mean,
I believe the next one will be, yes, because as you were saying, we're going to have results from new researches, new therapies, new.
We will have a new research from the to present, to comment, to share, which is gonna be published in the next month. But there will be a lot of things a lot of follow up during the next year. We will have a new research from the German Sport University of Cologne, the research team that carried out the Outsport research. We will have an important project which is starting this month, called Mazes, related to non-formal education through sport, so spreading the methodology created during the Outsport project in the field in the pedagogical field. So from EICS side, we are trying to do our best, providing also the space of talking and talking together, coming together, and sharing ideas. and of course also in the field of actions. Let's see what's going to happen in the next month in the Italian football, and also we also hope that in Europe other sport federation and football federation and sport Olympic Committee can start to do more for LGBTI inclusion and human rights. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Klaus, for being with us. Thank you, Gaia. Thank you, Gaia. Thank you, Andrea. Thank also to Alexander for his wonderful message. Yes. We hope Jake is okay, even if he couldn't be with us, but maybe will be for next time. And thank you to all our spectators that are going to watched us and are going to watch us also later, because the registration will be available on the social network on the Outsport social network, and also this year also on the page Da Voce al Rispetto, the Italian page owned by Gaynet. So thank you everyone, and see you for next year to the next edition. Bye. Bye.
Nice to meet you, Klaus. Bye.
Bye.